Hello, everyone, and welcome to Body Bags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I'm Lonnie from Horror Heaven77. And the movie that I want to talk about is a 2006 prequel, which this is a little bit tricky because, that's kind of a problem when it comes to prequels, especially when it comes to horror films, because when it's a prequel, it's not going to end very well, but it's building up. So this is one of those movies that you really have to be a fan of this franchise, and you have to want to be invested in it. But I actually really like this movie, and the movie I'm talking about is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Got the unrated version, of course. Um, Before, real quick, I just want to go off on a little tangent here. Hey, Scream Factory. If anybody from Scream Factory ever watches this, you guys do have access to the Warner Library and the Turner, you know, um, the New Line, cinema releases and stuff like that. How about if we can maybe see about getting this out there one day in a beautiful like 2 disc Blu-ray collector's edition? That'd be pretty sweet. There are already two versions of the Blu-ray out there. New Line put out a version where it does have the bonus features and everything else, but the problem is it's the censored version of the movie. And then Alliance, they put out a Blu-ray that has the uncensored version of the movie, but it's a bare bones, Blu-ray with no bonus features. So, I would say, hey, Screen Factory, this is just an idea. Maybe somewhere down the road, maybe we can get like a 2 disc collector's edition of this movie. Like disc one have the rated version, disc two have the unrated version. You can import the bonus features from here, maybe even add a few more. Just throwing that out there, something to think about. But anyway, getting back to it, this is actually the first. There were two prequels to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is actually a prequel to the remake, which I've reviewed on the channel before, and I actually do like the remake. Now, the thing is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is easily like one of my all-time favorite movies. I could watch it any time of the day or night. I could watch it multiple times in one day. I've said it before. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original Evil Dead, and the original Halloween. Those are probably like my three, top tier all time favorite movies. But anyway, though, they did the remake in 2003, which obviously, if you've seen the movie, I'm not going to give away the ending, but obviously, I don't think that they were ever thinking in terms of it being franchised or anything like that. I don't think they ever thought of there being a sequel or anything like that. When you see the movie, you'll understand, especially towards the end of the movie. Yeah, you could tell they weren't really thinking in terms of this ever, branching off into another franchise. You could tell they were going for just a one and done movie. And, but the problem was that, the remake actually became a hit. And personally, I think the reason why the remake became such a hit was because it was 2003. I think everybody was really getting sick and tired of all these really like kind of like really watered down, really like teeny bopper, quote unquote horror movies that to me felt more like teenage soap operas than they did horror films. Kind of like everybody was getting tired of all the screams and the I Know What You Did Last Summers and urban legends and all this, where it's so watered down. And I think everybody was really in the mood for really like, just a really intense, good horror film, something with some teeth to it, no pun intended. But so anyway, so they did the remake, it came out, it was a big hit. Now the downside is because it was a big hit, that's pretty much what kicked off. Okay, well, we remade Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and now we got to go remake every horror movie from the 70s and 80s. So unfortunately, that was a side effect. But from my understanding, is that over the next couple of years, people kept saying, hey, do something else. We want another one. Hey, we're interested. What about the Hewitt family? What's going on with them? Let's make another one, or go ahead and make another one, and all this stuff. And I think they knew because they kind of set themselves up where they really couldn't do much of a sequel. Um, but I think they just so they decided, well, we can't really do much of a sequel, so let's go ahead and do a prequel. And this for a prequel, in my opinion, this movie doesn't disappoint. I know this movie gets kind of harassed quite a bit. I've seen some reviews where, yeah, people kind of really go after this movie. And yes, it's got some problems. I ain't going to deny that. But overall, it's brutal. It's intense. It's, yes, it's got some flaws to it. I won't deny that, but it's definitely got some good points to it too. So let's go ahead and, I've gone on long enough. How about we talk about the movie already? Well, anyway, okay, so the story takes place in 1969. Obviously, a few years before the events of the originals, 1973. Now you got four young people. You got Eric and Dean, who are two brothers. They're getting ready to go off to Vietnam, and they have their girlfriends, Chrissy and Bailey, with them. And so now Eric, he has already served a tour in Vietnam and he's done his time. He's come home, but he's going to do a second tour basically so he can go there for his little brother Dean and take care of him and watch over him and stuff. But here's the only problem: is Dean is or Eric is the only one who's kind of thinking that this whole thing is a good idea, whereas like Chrissy, Bailey, and Dean are thinking, no, this is not a good idea. Uh, at one point at the beginning, Chrissy, she's not really well aware of their plans, but it turns out that Dean and Bailey, or yeah, Dean and Bailey, they're going to basically, he's going to dodge the draft and he's going to get out of there, and they're going to go. What was it? Mexico, or yeah, I think it was Mexico. Anyway, he's going to dodge the draft and he's not going to Vietnam because everybody knows, you know, all three of them know what a horrible experience that was for Eric. He's definitely having like post traumatic stress syndrome and everything from being over there, and it's definitely, it's definitely had an effect on him, not in a good way, but obviously, but. And so at one point, Chrissy, she finds out about that, what their plan is, and she's like, "Yeah, you know what? You two go. Don't go there," and all this stuff. Well, in the meanwhile, we have at the beginning of the movie, Thomas Hewitt, aka Leatherface, in this. He's born in a slaughterhouse, which, yeah, you could say that. All right, it's okay. You could say maybe it's a little cool, but it's a little too on the nose there. And then, what was the mother? I forget her name. I'm sorry, but I forget the character's name. So anyway, she finds him in a dumpster, and he's deformed and everything. And so she brings him home, and then Charlie Hewitt, who, Arlie Ermy, he's, whoa, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, But they go ahead, they take him in, they raise him as their own and everything else. And so he gets a job working in the meat packing plant, which is pretty much like the only business left in this town. They're in this very small rural Texas community that's, the town is pretty much dead. There's nothing left. All the businesses are shutting down. People are moving away. It's very much turning into a ghost town. And so, Thomas, he's doing his job. He's cutting up the meat and everything else. While everybody, there's only like two guys, the boss and an assistant. They're packing up and all this stuff. And they see him still there, and he's still cutting the meat and packaging it and all this stuff. And so, the boss tells the assistant, hey, go down there and tell that idiot, that we're not open anymore. He doesn't have a job anymore and all this stuff. So the assistant goes down and he's trying to talk to him, but, Thomas, he's still cutting the meat and all this. And finally he tells you, get out of here. I forget what he call him, an idiot or retard, something like that. And of course this, and then we come to find out, of course, that, Thomas, he's been bullied all of his life because of his face, and, he's got face cancer and things like that. And people always, talk down on him. People always, just, really treated him like garbage. And so he gets mad. He comes back, and he's wearing this kind of like leather kind of face mask. Think of almost like the Hannibal Lecter face restraint mask, but made out of leather. And that's what he's wearing in the beginning here. So anyway, he comes back, decides he's going to get revenge on his boss because his boss has been, abusing him all these years. So he takes a sledgehammer, bashes in the boss's head, and for whatever reason, Thomas finds his chainsaw, and it's just sitting there on a table. It's like, I don't know. I've never been to, very many slaughterhouses or abattoirs or anything like that. Do they have a lot of chainsaws laying around? But so anyway, so he takes the chainsaw, and, And then a deputy comes to the house and he's telling Charlie, that Arlie Ermey's character, he's telling him about, it's actually is Lou Temple from, how many of, like, several of Rob Zombie's movies, Devil's Rejects and Halloween and 31 and all that stuff. So he comes and tells him, hey, yeah, we have a problem. Your nephew killed a guy. We have to bring him in. It's like, I want you to go with me, to keep him calm, so we don't want any violence. We don't want a bad situation. So Charlie decides, okay, yeah, so I'm going to go with him. So they're riding along and they see him walking along the road. And so, he goes out. So the sheriff tells Charlie, stay in the car. I'm going to go talk him down. He's like, I'll call you if I need you. So he goes out and he's, like got the gun and everything. He's like, put the weapon down, Hewitt, and all this stuff. Unbeknownst to him, Charlie, wanting to protect his nephew and, just not, wanting to protect his family, he takes the shotgun that's on the dashboard. He goes out and he blows off the sheriff's head. And so he's like, I just killed the whole fucking police department. And for, before I go on, before I say anything else, the thing is like, yeah, Leatherface is badass in this movie, but Arlie Ermy steals this movie. He literally does. I mean, it's like, oh my God, he just takes over this entire movie. So he kills the sheriff, and so he decides he's going to be the sheriff, and this is how he becomes Sheriff Hoyt. And it turns out Hoyt was actually the name of the sheriff that he murdered. So he just, so he's in there like, and so, now he's Sheriff Hoyt. He's giving this speech to the family saying that, what, he's like, we've been through some tough times and we're going to get through this too. And, he's all like, we've had a situation where we starve. Well, we're not going to starve now, thanks to the sheriff. This begins the cannibalism. And so they decide that they're going to stay there because this is their home. And basically, he decides he's going to be the law and there's nothing to stop him. There's nobody there to stop him. So, he decides this is what they're going to do. They're going to start, abducting people and killing them and eating them and, and everything. And this is how they're going to survive. So going back to our four leads, they're on their way and they stop at like a gas station, and there's a group of bikers there. And so, they start going. Well, Eric catches Dean sitting in the backseat of their Jeep. He's setting his draft card on fire. So he's all like, and they get into this argument. Meanwhile, this biker chick, she comes up and she's got a shotgun. She's trying to weigh them over because she's going to rob them. And so, that gets into a big situation and all this, and a cow gets out in the middle of the road. And so, the Jeep flips over. And so, the biker chick, she shows up and she's, okay, I'm going to rob you. Let's just get this over with and all this stuff. Well, at this point, Sheriff Hoyt, he shows up and, he immediately kills the biker lady. And so he takes, it turns out Chrissy, played by Jordana Brewster, who everybody will remember as Mia, Vin Diesel, Dom's sister in the Fast and the Furious franchise. She gets thrown clear from the, wreckage. And so she sees them. And so Hoyt takes Eric Dean and Bailey and puts them in the car, takes them back to the house. And so, he starts, torturing Eric and Dean, and he's being very perverted with Bailey. He keeps like feeling her up and all this kind of stuff. And so, they're trying to, and so they're having to endure all this torture and everything by Sheriff Hoyt. Meanwhile, he takes the biker chick's dead body and has, Thomas Hewitt, take her down and cut her up and tells her, hey, it's the same, no different than the slaughterhouse. It's just meat and bone. So just, do the job and all this. And so meanwhile, Chrissy, she enlists the help of one of the bikers. He tells her, like they killed your girlfriend or whoever she was. And so he goes and so, they go to the house and about ready to give away almost too much here. But so as night falls, basically our four characters have to try to make it out. And as things progress, essentially, Thomas, while he's wearing this mask, he finally decides, hey, it'd be a much better idea. What if I just started skinning people's, faces and wear them as my mask and everything else? So this way I'd have a normal looking face. And so It's up to Chrissy to try to get her friends and her boyfriend out of the Hewitt house before they all end up, being cut up and served for dinner. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I think I've said too much already. Overall, yes, this movie is a prequel, and because it is a prequel, it does have some problems. One of the main things being there are certain elements in this movie that are considered pretty underwhelming. I think I've heard people complain saying like it just seems underwhelming that Thomas just managed to find Thomas Leatherface. I'm going to go ahead and start calling him Leatherface. Leatherface just happens to find the chainsaw at the slaughterhouse where he worked. Um, when you watch the remake, it's like, okay, we find out that Sheriff Hoyt, he pulls out his teeth. We find out like his upper front teeth are missing. They explain how that happened. And, like old Monty, we find out what happens to his legs because in the remake, he doesn't have any legs. He's in a wheelchair bound with no legs. So we find out what happens with that. So, but I think for some people, some things would be, better left to the imagination. The ending is a little bit silly, but at the same time, it's like, okay, it makes sense. Not so much silly that it ends the way that it does, but somewhat more silly in the execution because there is something that I've heard other YouTubers talk about this, and yeah, they're right. It is kind of ridiculous when you think about the logistics of it. But overall, it's a very entertaining movie. It's brutal. It's violent. You get some good chainsaw action. That's something like if you ever follow the series, there are some of the movies where one of the big complaints is there's not much of Leatherface with the chainsaw, stuff like that. But this one here, yeah, Leatherface definitely does some damage with the chainsaw, so it's pretty good. I would say there are moments though where it feels it's following the remake just a little too closely because okay, we got another showdown in the slaughterhouse again. They did that in the remake. Um, we get a dinner scene which we didn't get with the remake. We get a dinner scene and stuff like that. But overall, it's a very solid movie. It's pretty good for a prequel. I think it is. It's just that's the only problem though. The biggest problem I would say with this movie is even at the beginning of the movie, you know where it's going to go. You know how it's going to end. You know what it's going to lead up to. So there is that. So kind of go in knowing that you pretty much already know how it's going to end. You just got to determine if the journey to getting there is worth it for you. But I would say, yeah, especially with the cast you got in here. Now, I would say Jordana Brewster. I mean, she's not a bad actress at all, but I would say she's not at the top of my list of my favorite Chainsaw Massacre women. But she still does a solid job. Everybody in this movie does well with what they're given. Andrew Bryniarski, yeah, I mean, he does make a good Leatherface, and I can't take that away from him. I just really, really wished he hadn't been, such a jerk about it and sitting there, I was born to wear the mask. Nobody's going to do this better than I did. And then when he even started ragging on all the other, supposedly he started ragging on all the other actors who ever played Leatherface. It's like, dude, you ragged on Gunner. Yeah, you really messed up, dude, by ragging on Gunner. Nobody rags on Gunner. Anyway, but he does make a good Leatherface, and I can't take that away from him. Um, but yeah, but like I said, Arlie Ermy, he steals this movie. I mean, he's worth watching it just to see his performance alone. You know, it's almost like his. You could say, yeah, it is a little bit like his Full Metal Jacket performance, but like amped up to 11. Except he's completely nuts in this movie. But Arlie Ermy, yeah, he's worth watching this movie for alone. But like I said, yeah, this movie does have some problems with it. There are some flaws in the logic and in the storytelling, but you know what? I mean, I've seen movies with a lot worse. So, this here is like, yeah, okay, it bugs me a little bit, but I can forgive it. So I would definitely recommend it. It's a good story, and I'm sorry to the people who really love the movie Leatherface. In my opinion, this is a much better prequel than Leatherface. Um, so anyway, but yeah, I think that's pretty much about all I'm going to say about it. Give it a shot. It's got some really, K and B does some great gore effects, or is he even K and B at this point? I think by then it was just Nicotero and Burger, but it still might have been K and B. But you get a lot of good gore in here, especially make sure you get the unrated version though. But yeah, you get a lot of gore in here. It's pretty graphic, it's pretty violent. So it's got just about everything you could want. So anyway, so yeah, so that's pretty much going to do it. I think I've said everything I need to say. So If anybody took the time to watch this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the Body Bags channel. There's a different reviewer, one for every day of the week. I'm the Friday reviewer. We got different guys. Everybody's all doing great stuff. We got theme weeks and everything else, label weeks and all that fun stuff coming up. So, everybody, again, thank you for watching. Take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you later.